Hey everyone, Diavolo here, and in today's banger, we're diving back into Chainsaw Man and going over the full life, or at least all of the info that we have about the true Chainsaw Man, better known to us as just Pochita, and his journey throughout the series. So obviously, massive spoiler warning to anyone who doesn't want to know the overall outcome of part 1 so far. So if you are new around here as well and want to see other videos just like this, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and also be sure to leave a like on the video, as it really helps out with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. Plus, a whole bunch of Chainsaw Man videos throughout the community recently have been getting age restricted, so just viewer discretion is advised, but this does also follow YouTube's guidelines. I'm not here to sensationalize the brutality of this story. Instead, I'm trying to bring, light to the amazing writing that Tatsuki Fujimoto actually has. But anyway, enough of that, let's get into the story. So this here with our teddy bear Pochita isn't going to be as straightforward as my normal videos where I explain arcs and all. Because the series is pretty much through Denji's point of view the entire time, much of Pochita's past is shrouded in mystery, with the little information throughout the first 80% of the story being provided by Makima and the other devils our melon-loving boy annihilates along the way. So, before the series even began, and something that we don't actually know for a while, but actually see when Denji first meets him, Pochita was stuck in a hugely outnumbered fight, and after disappearing from this battle with some other people in the series that I'll get to in a second, Pochita is reduced to this near-death state, or Makima calls it this near-death state. And in this state, he appears to be a small orange doggo devil with a chainsaw appendage protruding from the center of his head, almost like a nose, and that's kind of who we come to know him as throughout the story. Before he was reduced back to this form though, he was this freaking massive, bulked up humanoid devil with 4 arms that had these long ass saws protruding from each of them, with another chainsaw coming from the front of his head, similar to Denji's hybrid form. So think of this every time I'm referring to Pochita in the past instead of what Denji looks like, obviously. Pochita, I guess ever since chainsaws were invented, or maybe even eternity, it's not really told when he came into existence, but he was known as the Chainsaw Man in Hell. The source of his fear stemmed from the series-breaking unique ability of his, which erases devils completely from existence, and the memory of everyone and everything by simply munching them back. Devils killed by the true Chainsaw Man cannot continue their reincarnation cycle, which for anyone who doesn't actually know what the devil reincarnation cycle is, pretty much when a devil dies on Earth, they return to Hell, and then when they die in Hell, they come back to Earth, until obviously Pochita shows up and he's like, nah bro, time for a meal. But that is an extremely simplified version of it. Obviously, this makes Chainsaw a massive threat to devil kind and earn him the moniker of the devil that devils fear most, or the hero of hell, depending which side you're on. This infamy made Pochita the target of many devils who tried killing him multiple times, but he always found a way to come back and fight again. His power was subject to worship for some, making certain devils follow him like Beam, and the object of fear for others, who ran away trying to escape him. This eventually culminated in a battle between him, the 4 horsemen, and the weapon devils, in which he was badly wounded and, according to Makima, reduced to a completely near-death form. At the height of the battle against Makima and the 4 horsemen, Pochita vanished, then was somehow found on Earth by Denji. After what happened at Denji's father's grave, Pochita, who can't communicate and can only seemingly bark like a pup, saw that Denji, in an act of empathy, offered him his blood so that he could recover from his wounds, but only on the condition that the two would become future partners. Throughout the few years that they spent together, from the time that Denji was a child to the current time period, Pochita would live alongside him in his leahy shed, listening to Denji and all of his worries, all of his wishes, the food he wanted to eat, and pretty much just everything the two didn't have in life, while at the same time assisting him in devil hunting, wood clearing, and just sharing on whatever rations the broke duo could afford. One day, after Pochita witnesses Denji cough up blood, both of them are called out on a mission to take down a devil by their old Yakuza dude. Yet, Denji is sadly duped by this old fart who ended up forming his own contract with a zombie devil to try and kill Denji. After a short yet absolutely terrifying struggle to escape from the horde of zombies, Denji and Pochita are mortally wounded by the 100 or so Yakuza turned zombies. After the pair are just left like garbage in a dumpster, their blood from Denji somehow through pure manga luck managed to flow down and entered Pochita's mouth. While going over all of the happy moments that made up their friendship, he remembers a specific moment where Denji told him that if he ever died, to then take over his body and make his dreams come true for him. Coming back to reality now, Pochita begins morphing shape and assumes the role of Denji's heart, merging with his torso while also repairing his damaged body in the process. Back in the dream world, in a complete role reversal Uno card play, Pochita this time manages to save Denji, but unlike how Denji wanted him to take over his body and mind, he didn't. Instead, he communicates with him that he's always loved listening to Denji talk about his dreams, and due to this, he explains that he wants to hear more from him, so he forms a contract with Denji where he will become his heart, and in return, Denji will show him all of his dreams. Skipping forward and throughout this story, Pochita's past as the Chainsaw Man is briefly alluded to only a few times before the main later arcs. During the extremely long and drawn out battle with the Eternity Devil, where the main part of the 4th division is trapped in an almost separate time and space, unable to escape, there, Denji notices that the devil is mysteriously afraid of his chainsaws, and also does his best to avoid any kind of direct confrontation with him, instead asking all of his colleagues to try and kill the boy. Yet, just to be super difficult as well, the devil also seems overjoyed by the fact that it would be the one to kill the Chainsaw Devil. I'm assuming because of this he would in some way get a huge power up through killing him. Obviously he's not a fan of the Chainsaw Man, and if he did actually manage to get the kill, all of the fear that the devils have towards the Chainsaw Devil would probably swap over and increase the Eternity Devil's power even more. Plus, I'd say he'd be contacted by the higher up devils, like the 4 Horsemen or maybe even the Primal Devils if they hate Pochita just as much as well. Anyways, after a few days of contemplation over what to do, and everyone's favourite Kobeni trying to murk Denji with her kitchen knife, he finally does decide to leave the room and face the Eternity Devil head on. Once they enter the standoff, the Eternity Devil screams about how the Chainsaw Devil or Pochita was indeed alive after all, and that Denji is far weaker than how Pochita was in the past. Once the fight reaches its end in that usual Tatsuki way, where Denji manages to fuel himself off the enemy's body like some sort of organic devil reactor that runs off blood, Himeno, like everyone else, heard the taunts and mentions of the Chainsaw Devil through the Eternity Devil, and later ponders to Aki why the Eternity Devil talks like he knew about Denji or the devil inside of him. Obviously, Himeno herself doesn't fully understand what Denji is. I don't think she realizes that Denji has merged with a devil that is inside of him and that he currently has a contract with that devil. And that's probably why it's referred to as Denji's heart specifically. Anyway, as I've said, because this video is somewhat through Pochita's point of view or the stuff that relates to him directly and his overall goal with Denji, we skip way ahead in the story to a point throughout the Bomb Girl arc where we meet the first hardcore fan of the Chainsaw Devil and a personal favorite character of mine. After the events of the previous battle, which was against the Katana Man, so if you guys want to catch up on all of that, then you guys can go and check out my video, which I will leave a link to down in the description. Makima tells Denji that she will have to borrow power for a blood extraction, as she sucked on one too many zombies and is having a power trip currently. In her place for the time being, she introduces him to Beam, a shark fiend obsessed with Denji's chainsaw powers. After getting smothered all over by Beam, a hella confused Denji kicks him back off him and asks Makima why in the world does Beam have such devotion towards him, to which she puts on this super, I don't know face and tells him that maybe it's the resemblance. But before Denji can probe more, he's cut off again by this rampant Beam jumping on him and proclaiming that he loves chainsaws. Obviously, Makima was doing her best to lie there, and it actually implied that Denji and his chainsaws reminded Beam of his god, the Chainsaw Devil from the past, who he was obviously a follower of. Later on, we end up getting a bit of information relating directly to Pochita's original abilities. After the Typhoon Devil shows up to help out Rezi in her fight against the Chainsaw Man, Angel realizes that Beam also knows about the original Chainsaw Devil, and asks him to spit out any information about him to help Denji better understand his powers. Everyone's favorite shark, who's like, that's my Lord Chainsaw, he's the baddestest, explains that the Chainsaw Lord of the past was ultra fast, but when he moves, he uses more than just his feet. Instead, he uses the chainsaw chains to hook into things to swing between structures like a chainsaw Spider-Man. Denji, who hears this plain as day explanation, somehow misinterprets it. He thinks that he needs to use his own powers to move, so in the wildest move, and while Beam is just hyping him up and calling him a genius, he commands his shark friend to fully transform. Then mounting Beam like the stallion he is, Denji screams that he's got to break Beam in with his chain and ride him like a goddamn horse. Everyone then who sees this hilariously reacts to this random change, asking if Beam was correct, and Beam, who's probably just like, oh my god is literally on my back, instantly screams that this is correct. But anyway, after we get that little bit of information from Beam, again we skip forward in the series to the next point where we get another mention of Pochita, or specifically something that affects him more than Denji. So due to Reze and Denji's fight being caught on TV, the entire world now knows that Denji, or Pochita more specifically, are in Japan. Makima, who absolutely cons Denji here, uses the idea that hybrids like Denji are an extremely valuable asset to specific countries, and that's why they want to capture him. when in all reality it's most likely that they know about the true Chainsaw Man and are actually sending assassins to Japan in order to prevent Makima from having the control she wants over the Chainsaw Devil's heart. Makima obviously doesn't want them to steal away Pochita, so she ends up cancelling the trip that they had already previously planned to instead force Denji to be put under 24-hour surveillance. This obviously leaves our boy completely disappointed, as he was extremely hyped to get away from Tokyo and spend some time with Makima. Because of this entire thing right here, he later ends up getting extremely depressed and begins wondering who exactly Pochita is to begin with, and why does everyone want his heart. So next up, we're skipping forth to like 100% the saddest arc throughout the entire story, the one that had been built up since the very beginning, the Gun Devil arc, where we get a little bit more information about Pochita himself. So if you guys have seen my entire story video for part 1, you'll know what happens to Denji and everyone in hell throughout the entire International Assassins arc. After returning, it extremely affects Power's mentality, to the point where she's unable to do anything by herself over the fear that the Darkness Devil might show up and kill her at any point. To keep her calm, Denji ends up going to the toilet with her, constantly reminding her she's okay, and even bathing with her so that she doesn't freak out while she's alone. This all culminates in an extremely important moment for the duo, where Power offers Denji some of her blood as an apology for making him miss out on his trip with Makima. Even though they don't realize it at the time, what happens here is actually so damn important in the overall story. While drinking her blood, Denji internally thanks to Pochita, telling him on how he always thought naughty things would feel better the more you know your partner. But even though he knows Power extremely well, this just doesn't feel hot at all. He thinks that it probably isn't that you should learn anything and everything there is to know about life, but instead that there are some things you have to know and some things that are better off unknown. In that moment, he casts aside the idea of ever opening that mysterious door he always sees inside of his dreams. With Aki obviously being the oldest in the group, over time he began to take on like this big brother role for everyone there. And with him being unable to protect his family throughout hell, he became extremely depressed as well about the possibility of them dying in an upcoming operation to defeat the Gun Devil. Because of this, Aki, who's just trying to keep them safe, asks the old man himself Kishibe if it's alright if he quit the operation along with Denji and Power, which surprised Kishibe as he expected Aki to be the one most eager for this event of taking down the Gun Devil. However, after the group later meets with the Minecraft hoe herself, Mummy Makima, Aki ends up getting persuaded to continue in the operation, as either way, she was going to force Denji and Power into going on the mission by simply changing them from Division 4 to Division 7, putting Aki between a rock and a hard spot. Later on, the future devil, who's Aki's new devil, appears after he was called out to. By the way, if there is any confusion over like why Aki has a new devil here, if Aki was to continue using the needle weapon that he currently has, he would end up dying as his lifespan would run out, leaving him unable to complete his own mission of killing the Gun Devil. Plus the Fox Devil he used earlier on in the series gapped it and doesn't want to talk to him anymore due to it getting damaged in the Katana Man battle. Anyways, the future devil who rises up outside the window sends an ominous vision to Aki and states that both him and Power will end up being slaughtered by Denji in a completely and absolutely unavoidable future. Then directly after this, the devil that devils fear most shall appear, foreshadowing Pochita's or the Chainsaw Devil's return in the future. So I should probably quickly explain what happens to Aki while he's out with Makima, as I get a lot of comments in my entire story video asking how in the world Aki ended up becoming who he is later on in the story. Anyway, in the battle with the Gun Devil, as he approaches Makima, taking out thousands and thousands of people, Aki, Makima and Angel all wait by a church in the open for him. Once he gets within shooting distance, Makima instantly shoots these chains out of her, which pierce through both Aki and Angel, taking their abilities and adding them to her arsenal, along with the abilities from the Punishment Devil, Snake Devil, and Spider Devil. I'm assuming that this didn't instantly kill Aki or Angel, and wasn't a part of the vision Aki was originally given. After Makima does some sort of craziness, making this portal appear above the Gun Devil, she then goes ahead and freaking off-screens the freaking dude. I actually really wish we got to see what happened here, as most likely Makima went demon mode and just completely sharted all over this part of the Gun Devil, then took him apart and merged him with Aki, turning him into the Gun Fiend, as we know that's eventually what happens. Sadly, due to Aki being merged off-screen with the Gun Devil, the future devil's prediction eventually comes true, as Denji is forced to kill Aki in an attempt to save his one remaining family member and best friend. Yet, as we all know, that doesn't exactly work out for Denji, who gave up his emotions to Makima and was unable to prevent Power's death as well. To top it off, on all of the days she could have been murked, she was killed in front of our boy on his birthday, while she held his cake in her hands. Left in a crippling depressive state after this, Denji asks Makima if this was all a dream, unable to comprehend why she would even suddenly do something like that. Makima then reveals to him that she wanted to bring Pochita back since the very beginning. However, she was unable to do so because he had to stay sealed away as Denji's heart due to the promise between them. Left with no other choice then, she quickly planned a way to try and break Denji's will, and in turn, the promise between him and Pochita. Makima explains the promise he made with Pochita was in fact a contract, one that Pochita would remain as Denji's heart as long as Denji fulfilled his dreams of living a normal life. Thus, Makima went around planning a normal life for Denji, making him live with Aki and power in the hopes that they would become like a family, and to make their happiness his new normal. Then once it was all set in place, she would destroy the whole thing. Any form of happiness or sadness from this point on would be solely crafted by her, and a tactic to manipulate him even further, as she believes that it's time he atoned for Pochita's previous sins. Finally, in a moment that I'm not even sure if it's true to this day or not, she then reveals that Denji in fact killed his own father, and manipulates him into believing that he was a horrible person because of his patricide, and therefore did not deserve to live his dream of having a normal life. Hearing this over and over again, it flashes into Denji's dream world, where he's still a child, and sadly, because of that, he ends up agreeing with her, as he's now been successfully gaslighted into believing that he was truly a horrible person. Then, with that finally complete, Makima had successfully broken Denji's contract with Pochita, leaving the boy on the couch in a completely unresponsive state. The day after, Makima walks alongside a catatonic Denji in a hallway filled with all of Tokyo's Special Division 4 devils and fiends. Makima then reveals that every single one of them were followers of the original Chainsaw Devil in Hell, and that they were waiting for his resurrection. Suddenly being caught off guard though, an unexpected explosion goes off, blowing up the side of the building and showing the absolute G himself, the big teacher Kishibe, who had brought an entire division to kill Makima. In combination with this first move, a few of his other top agents then begin summoning the Hell Devil to Earth in an attempt to trap Makima and send her back to Hell. However, Makima suddenly enlists the help of the Chainsaw Man by asking him to save her, forcing Pochita to take over Denji's catatonic body. This is obviously now due to the fact that the promise or contract was broken, leaving Denji's body as pretty much a vessel for Pochita, and also making the fateful return of the original Chainsaw Man, who technically now also controls Denji's body. Pochita quickly disposes of the Hell Devil, literally like cutting him up within the first panel that he's showing on, and turning him into a couple bits of Hell Sashimi. Honestly, it's such a freaking clean panel, and I've always loved going back and checking out like this panel here, where you finally see the full Chainsaw Man form for the very first time. Anyways, a remaining agent then uses himself to revive the Hell Devil back, telling him to die once he finishes his job. Yet for some random reason, it doesn't attack Makima, and instead slaps down on Pochita as if he's some sort of bug, casting him directly into hell. Soon after arriving there though, Pochita is greeted by hordes of devils that attack him over and over again, desperately trying to maul him. However, they are simply no match for the original Chainsaw Man, as he quickly and effortlessly defeats them all, one by one. Meanwhile, and back in Earth, Makima reveals to Kishibe the true power of the Chainsaw Man and why people either worship or fear him. Pochita is able to actually erase a devil's existence and the concept that they represent by eating them. Even now, Makima, who's probably had some of her friends eaten by Pochita, remembers the battles themselves, but the names have started to fade. It's shown that a confused Kishibe doesn't even know what the Nazi regime was, or that the Chainsaw Man has already erased things from the world like AIDS, World War II, nukes, the light of a specific star that breaks a child's mind, the 4 conclusions other than death at the end of life, and much, much more have already been erased from existence by the Chainsaw Man. Mummy Makima explains that her goal is that she's planning to fight him in order to defeat and control his powers with the aim of erasing concepts that she deems unnecessary for humankind, so that she can create the better world, or the world that she sees fit. Kishibe then asks her if she's not afraid of losing, to which she responds by saying that she wouldn't mind being devoured by Pochita, as she is a big fan of the Chainsaw Man. Pochita, just like he did at the beginning of the story, somehow manages to find a way out of hell and returns to Earth through a specific door. Still standing there with the old man, Makima continues to reveal that Pochita will always aid those who ask for his help, but in return, he will also kill them after the deed is done. Therefore, since she asks for his aid, Pochita is coming to destroy her. She warns Kishibe to stay back and prepares to engage Pochita, who's now standing opposite her on another roof. But before she can literally even move in an attempt to defend herself, Pochita comes flying through the window and literally slices her all up. After briefly looking at Kishibe, Pochita then hears Kobeni's call for help from far away and runs to her location, leaving Kishibe alone with Makima's body. Elsewhere, at everyone's favourite burger joint, which I can barely show any of because it's apparently far too brutal for YouTube, Kobeni is taken aside by her new boss, who chastises her and slaps her across the face. There, Kobeni quietly mutters those words she really wishes she didn't now: "Save me." Obviously not realising the consequences of this, the staff suddenly turn to see Chainsaw Man looming over them. From here on, for like a little bit, Pochita kinda like half confusedly tries to accomplish a few of his boys' wishes himself. He looks at the restaurant's menu and remembers an earlier request from Denji about how he always wanted to try hamburgers. Sitting at a nearby table, he attempts to order a hamburger, speaking through a series of chainsaw revs. After this freaking hilarious set of terrible coincidences, where Kobeni manages to drop his meal over and over again, her disbelieving co-workers watching her begin to believe that the situation is obviously an elaborate televised prank. Yet, they all end up getting yoinked by Pochita for Kobeni's mistakes. Pochita eventually manages to bite down on his floor burger, but grimaces at how disgusting it is. Then, in the same moment, he remembers another past wish of Denji's, which was to go on a date with a girl. Then, without even asking or thinking, he tears Kobeni away from her new job to take her out on an ice cream date. Stopping at the ice cream van, Chainsaw Man shreds it to pieces before acquiring a pair of ice creams for the cute couple. Kobeni continues to sob, crying out that the ice cream doesn't taste of anything, which is probably due to the fact that she's under so much stress frying her actual taste buds. Finally, someone who can save the day then appears and threatens Chainsaw Man. But JK, this was just some fodder random, and he is instantly eviscerated by the Chainsaw Man. As Pochita then turns Kobeni towards the infamous Dance mushroom machine, chucking her down on the ground, she orders the terrified lady to dance, but Kobeni comments that she has no money. Looking up though, she sees that Pochita had already shredded an ATM to bits, allowing Kobeni to get some cash and begin her terrifying world record run on the Dance mushroom machine. As this happens, Pochita finally leaves her to go elsewhere. He makes his way to a random rooftop and while surveying his surroundings, notices that Makima is already nearby. She commends him on him noticing her as she then begins commanding her allies to emerge. Suddenly, Chainsaw Man stands surrounded by 7 devil hunters, all commenting on their love for Makima and desire to date her. They each pledge their allegiance to Makima, with the Katana Man commenting she has saved their lives over and over again. As this happens, Makima agrees to the bet, which was a date in return for whoever can beat the Chainsaw Man first. As Makima stands amongst her group of devil-human hybrids, she elaborates on their true nature. They are not humans, devils, or fiends, but another type of creature that was erased by the Chainsaw Devil's powers, yet still somehow continues to exist. Pochita though, who couldn't really care less about her, just yawns in response. Seeing this, Makima then commands her agents to attack. So I've just got to chill on some aspects of this fight here so it doesn't get restricted as our little Pochita goes absolutely ham, destroying all of these silly old hybrids. But after laying out a few of the hybrids, Pochita leaps back to the safety of another building. Seeing this though, the whip hybrid appears and slashes at him. Her attacks are like utterly futile, which is probably why she didn't get her own arc, and have little to no impact rather than slowing his movement down. However, Reza then blasts through the building below him and grabs a hold of the slow Chainsaw Man, carrying him up into the sky. However, up in the sky, Denji manages to completely dunk on Reze, but still gets stunned in the air by a spear thrown from the spear hybrid. Taking this momentary daze to her advantage, Makima points her hand like some crazy ass finger pistol and says bang over and over again to blast the Chainsaw Man up into the upper atmosphere of the earth itself in an attempt to suffocate him. As Chainsaw Man is pushed out of the atmosphere and into space, he does the most insane respawn glitch and reaches inside of himself and rips out a portion of his own heart. He then proceeds to fling it down towards the ground below, and as the heart of Pochita begins to burn up upon re-entry to the atmosphere, Chainsaw Man's body quickly begins to reform around it. Still falling, he then does another big brain play, and unlike how Denji used his chains with Beam previously, Pochita uses them correctly, launching all of his chains across the city, grappling onto Makima, the whip, flamethrower and spear hybrids, then hoisting them all up into the air. They each express a moment of shock before they are too torn apart by Pochita's chainsaws. Back over with everyone's favourite Kobeni, her game of Dance Mushroom is showing coming to a close. As it finally ends, she stands there tired and sweating atop the machine before happily exclaiming that she got a perfect score. Yet, as she turns her head to the side, her expression turns to one of worry as she looks over at Chainsaw Man, who's just chilling on a step nearby watching her. With Makima having also arrived, she goes on to state to Kobeni that in total, she has been killed by the Chainsaw Man 26 times, and yet she still questions why it continued to refuse to eat her. Confused herself on how she even got involved in this mess, Kobeni shows denial, but Makima quickly cuts her off, saying that she did indeed have a major role in the events currently unfolding, and that her fear of Chainsaw Man had grown weaker. This prompts Kobeni to look over at Chainsaw Man as blood randomly begins to leak from his body, causing him to collapse forwards onto the alleyway. A television is then shown in the window of a city shop with a news broadcast being displayed stating that the Chainsaw Man had just defeated the Gun Devil. He goes on to state that the news of the Gun Devil's defeat was being met with a praise and shock across the globe. The following shots then show images of people thrilled and overjoyed as they watched the broadcast on their televisions. With more blood beginning to pool around the Chainsaw Man, Makima states that the humans cheering him on were eating away at his overall strength, contrasting the power given to him by all of the devils who fear him most. Then stating usage 1000 years, a large black spear pushes out from one of those weird ass rings Makima makes. Instantly, the faces of Kobeni and Pochita are shown reacting to the attack, their faces bathed in light as Makima launches the spear directly at Kobeni in an attempt to make the Chainsaw Man defend her. Like the hero he is though, Chainsaw Man moves forward in front of Kobeni, pushing her away and letting the spear pierce through his torso, causing him to immediately collapse to the ground. Seeing him gravely wounded, Makima sighs as the nearby crowds continue to cheer for him, his body laying still as the fear that once surrounded him slowly begins to fade. Now, remember when I said that it was super big brain that Denji was given some of Power's blood earlier on in the series? Well, going into this dream state, we find ourselves inside of Pochita, where he has managed to find the last remnant of Power's blood inside of Denji. Turning her head towards Pochita, a confused Power asks who he is before quickly making the connection that he was Pochita, who she'd been told about through what Denji had said to him. Pochita smiles at her realization before telling her that he wanted her to save Denji. He tells her that she wasn't truly dead, as she was currently the blood that Denji drank from her before, and that if nothing was done, she would soon disappear. Pochita asks for her to eat his flesh and revive as a full-fledged devil, to which our girl, like the freaking queen she is, happily obliges. So even as much as I've read the story, it still freaking confuses me at points. Like, someone please let me know if they know this for a fact, but I think that after Power shoots out of Chainsaw Man as the Blood Devil, Denji was given control back over his body by Pochita, as after Denji and Power have their final conversation together in the dumpster, where Denji forms a contract with Power to come and find her again so that they can be friends again in the future, he still has Pochita's tail protruding from his chest. Anyways, enough of that. Let me know if you guys know if I was correct there or not, down in the comment section below. Anyways, a bunch of stuff with Denji goes down in between him finally getting control back of his body and making it to the fateful day at the graveyard, where Denji and Makima have their final battle. Obviously, the majority of this fight here happens with Denji's point of view, so I'll only bring up the things that relate to Pochita directly. But something I do want to point out that is super interesting is that 3 crows at the very beginning of this fight, or before the battle even begins, are shown resting on a few graves nearby, before flying up into the sky. This here alludes to the other 3 foes and the 4 horsemen that our boy is going to have to defeat in the near future. Skipping more into this final battle, where Makima absolutely dunks on Denji, it really isn't even a fight at this point, it's just kind of a beatdown. She takes a hold of Denji's wounded corpse from the handle atop his head, then proceeds to tear up Pochita with her right arm. But I can't show you guys that here because YouTube is freaking crazy with Chainsaw Man and taking down people who show this panel. I'm not trying to bring light to the savageness of the story or sensationalize it. I'm trying to bring light to the absolutely brilliant writing that is Tatsuki Fujimoto and how he has crafted his story so well from the start to the end of it. But anyway, I can't do much about that, so just smash that like button and try and get this video to 5 to 10k likes or something, so that I know you guys want more of these series where I go over individual characters themselves and their life story from throughout Chainsaw Man. Anyways, as she slowly pulls Pochita from his body, she tells Denji that even when she used nothing but her bare fists, he still lost to her, and that he was not nearly as strong as Chainsaw Man. She asks how she could possibly get him to completely give up on living, and how she could ever possibly get Chainsaw Man back from him. Denji responds by not talking and instead spitting on her face, causing Makima to get angry and rage out, responding by telling him that Chainsaw Man did not ever spit in people's faces. No, he was far, far different. Chainsaw Man obviously did not wear clothes or even speak, and that he only made a mess out of everything that he did. She says that even with all of Denji's ignorance, he was still chosen as Chainsaw Man, which puzzles her. But now, since he was standing between the 2 of them, he must die. After Makima, for some bizarre reason, thinks she's managed to kill the protag of this entire series, this Arky wannabe lights up a smoke before literally coughing her own lungs out. Quickly, she puts out the full smoke so it doesn't light a fire and realizes that she can't handle the heat, and instead picks up Pochita, telling him that now is the 2nd time she had ever defeated him. She explains that he now belongs to her and that they are going to be together forever. That they'd eat lots together, sleep together, and live a happy life together forever. Several feet behind Makima though, Denji, who isn't actually dead, slowly stands up from amongst a pile of corpses, now wearing an oversized public safety uniform. He quietly walks over to Makima, and as soon as she starts to notice him, he pulls out a damn chainsaw and slices her down the chest. Confused and shocked, Makima gasps as she begins to collapse and falls to her knees. Denji, then in a complete role reversal from before, now stands directly above her. Reaching down, Denji picks up his boy Pochita, then exclaims that he'll be taking him back and says that what he did now was extremely dangerous and that he'd used up all of the blood Power had given to him from their contract. Hence, while I mentioned the stuff that happened in the dumpster earlier, otherwise it wouldn't have made sense if I didn't mention it. Anyway, Makima, now in a spot that she possibly expected to be in at some point, asks how Denji was even alive. To which also remember how Pochita ripped out a portion of his heart and then threw it back to the ground when he was almost blasted into space. Well, that was who Makima was actually fighting the entire time, and Denji just vaguely remembered how to fight like Pochita. So yeah. So with the power chainsaw running amok inside of Makima, she was caught off guard and unable to move, being stuck there in that one location, with the blood constantly tearing her up from the inside. Some absolutely mental stuff happens directly after this that involves a van, one full fridge of probably delectable meat, and Denji's stomach. But there is one final huge moment in this series where the cute little Pochita makes another appearance. So skipping forward to after we meet the new Control Devil, because for those unsure, due to Denji munching back Makima like I just literally alluded to and the way that he did, it didn't result in her being erased from existence, but instead it was almost a way to get around her uncanny contract with the Japanese Prime Minister. Now back home, and after falling asleep in bed with the new Control Devil, Nayuta, Denji begins to dream, with the dog sleeping with him now being replaced by Pochita. Within this dream, a young Denji opens his eyes and finds himself holding Pochita as the two sit within the shed they used to live in. Pochita tells Denji that his dream was to be hugged by someone, but his strength always made it hard for anyone to want to hug him. And that's probably why after he ended up saving someone, he ended up also killing them because he probably went to hug them and murked them in the exact same moment, which is kind of sad when you think about it. Pochita realizes that it sounded crazy but ensures Denji that he wasn't lying. He then thanks Denji for finally making his dream come true. After this, he asks Denji if he could do one more thing and fulfill the Control Devil's dream as well, as she's always dreamt of building an equal relationship with other people. The Control Devil had always dreamt of this, but couldn't seem to accomplish it because she only knew how to form relationships through power of fear, and because of that, she grew a yearning for something like a family over time. Pochita tells Denji that now he wanted him to make their dream come true for Nayuta, to which Denji asks Pochita how he was supposed to do that, and our lovable little doggo tells him to give her lots and lots of hugs. So that there officially brings us to the very end of what is Pochita's life, or everything that is kind of given to us that relates to him specifically throughout part 1 of the story. Obviously, if you guys have enjoyed this video and want to watch more stuff just like this, then let me know who you want me to go over in the future. If it be like Aki or say Makima's full life throughout the story, then I'll go and cover that, because at least, we have everything from their life specifically so far in the story as well that I can go over in huge detail, including Aki's background from when he was a childhood, which is extremely important, and the overall narrative with him and Denji and them becoming brothers in a sort of way. I absolutely love how it ends up fleshing out between the two of them and the final battle that ends up going down. Sorry to spoil any of you anime onlys that are here, but it's an absolutely amazing battle that sadly results in the death of his brother Aki. So if you guys want me to go over that, then let me know down in the comment section below and I'll be sure to do that in the future. Obviously though, if you are new around here and want to watch more stuff just like this, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and also be sure to leave a like on the video, as it really helps out with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. And if you want earlier access to my videos 2 days before they go live on YouTube, then be sure to check out my Patreon down on the link below, which I will leave there for all of you. But for now, it's been your professional degenerate Diavolo, and I will see you all in a bit. Bye.